What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel, and I'm recording this pretty much at the conclusion of the NBA draft, so let me know your guys' thoughts about that in the comments below. But I did not come here to talk about the NBA draft. Obviously, this time of year for NBA fans is very exciting because you have the draft with all the new players coming in, but then you also have the free agency period, which is about to begin soon. Guys opting in and out of their contracts. Lots of rumors swirling around about where guys are going to go. But the one team that's making a lot of headlines for what I believe and what many Nets fans, I believe, to spoil it for the wrong reasons, is the Brooklyn Nets, because it looks like the situation with, or the experiment with KD and Kyrie, it's looking like it could be coming to an end pretty soon, because it doesn't seem like Kyrie Irving wants to be in Brooklyn anymore. He doesn't want to remain a Net. And part of it is because the Nets are hesitant to offer him the type of financial security, aka a max contract, that he thinks he deserves. And so he put out a list of teams that he's interested in going to. Some of those include the Sixers, the Mavs, the Heat, Lakers, Clippers, other teams like that. And just to sort of recap the whole situation with the Nets, it was summer 2019. KD was in his last season in Golden State, and he was a unrestricted free agent. So was Kyrie Irving. And so they both decided to go to the Nets together to try and compete for and win championships. That was the expectation. They were going to maybe be the next dynasty, compete for and win championships, bring titles to Brooklyn, a team that had never done anything in the past, no championships, had some good players but didn't really do anything. I guess that was going to be the storyline, that they saved the franchise or whatever. I guess that's why KD left, why Kyrie left. They wanted to be the saviors of the other team in New York, because they're still not as popular as the Knicks, even though they've had better players over the past few years. But anyway, so they signed there. KD doesn't play the first year. Kyrie plays, but then the season is stopped in the bubble. The Nets are the 7th seed. They play Toronto in the first round. They lose. And then the next year they come back, and it's supposed to be the year. Everyone's getting ready for the Nets to be the team out east. And everything's going good, and they're high up in the standings. They're a 2 seed, and then they trade for James Harden. And it pretty much sets the NBA world on fire, because it looks like they're going to be the prohibitive favorites to win the title and definitely have a chance to be a great team over the next few years. So they bring James Harden in, and they don't play a lot of games together, which was already an alarming sign from the start, because obviously, as we know, going into the playoffs, the main thing that wins you championships other than talent is chemistry, camaraderie. How well do your teammates know each other? How well do you guys know each other's tendencies? Can you depend on each other for certain stuff? So then they weren't playing a lot of games together, but then people believed, just because of how talented they were, that they could just win games and it wouldn't matter. So they played the Celtics in the first round, and they swept the Celtics, who were injured at that point. Didn't really have a lot of offensive firepower outside of Jason Tatum, because I believe Jaylen Brown did not play in that series. So they beat Boston, and then they ran into the Bucks in the second round, a team that was well-connected, gelled, waiting to break through after getting their hearts broken in the past 2 Eastern Conference playoffs. So the Nets go up 2-0 on the Bucks, and one of those games, Game 2, some people love to bring this game up every single time they talk about how fraudulent or how the Bucks ring doesn't count, because the Nets had one really good game in a 7-game series where they obliterated Milwaukee, and people like to bring that up and act like that was the deciding factor. That proved that if the Nets were healthy, that if Harden didn't get injured, if Kyrie didn't get injured, that Brooklyn would have beaten Milwaukee and won the championship, which I think is completely false, because the Bucks came back and tied that series 2-2, even though Kyrie got injured, and they won Game 6 and 7 to win this series. The Nets had their chance to close them out. They were up 3-2, but they just couldn't get it done. So then they lose in the second round, the Nets do, and then they come back next year, and then we're all saying the same thing. Like, if they're healthy, they're going to be the team to beat in the East and the finals. And obviously that the year didn't start off on the right foot, because obviously everyone's still recovering from COVID, and different cities have their mandates and whatever. And New York was one of those places where you had to be vaccinated if you wanted to play. And so obviously Kyrie Irving was very strong in his stance about not getting the vaccine. and he held his ground. He didn't get the vaccine, which means he couldn't play in Brooklyn Nets home games, but he could play in road games. So what the Nets did, surprisingly, was shut him down entirely. They said, we're not going to allow Kyrie Irving to be a part-time player. So then the Nets started the season, and it was bad because James Harden did not look like himself. He was either hurt, out of shape, or washed. It looked like a combination of all three, to be honest. And then Kevin Durant was dealing with his own problems as well. And the Nets were cruising along, and they were actually a 2 seed at one point just because KD had been carrying them throughout the season and was described as an MVP candidate before he got hurt and had his own injury problems. And so Kyrie Irving did eventually come back because the Nets saw this and they were like, okay, we can't. KD's out there by himself and we're barely making it out alive in these games. And James Harden is gone because I believe ultimately James Harden left the Nets because he didn't like how the situation with Kyrie Irving was unfolded. He went there to form a big three, and Kyrie Irving didn't participate in games that he was eligible to participate in if he had just gotten vaccinated. So obviously Harden went to Philly, and then it was just KD and Kyrie to finish out the season. And then for the Nets, and they fell all the way down to the 7th seed. That was their seeding entering the playoffs. And they played against the Boston Celtics in the first round, obviously the Eastern Conference champions. And the Celtics returned the favor for what Brooklyn did to them last year. They swept them in pretty convincing fashion. Outside of Game 1, which was very close, obviously ended on a Jason Tatum buzzer beater. And so, yep, the Nets got swept, and another year of disappointment for Brooklyn. And now we sit here looking at a team that was supposed to maybe be a dynasty and compete for championships now being on the verge of broken up. The experiment is about to be over, and Kyrie obviously put out his list of teams, and the thing with his list is most of those teams can't even afford him because he would want a max deal. So part of that would be part of the reason why they wouldn't be interested. And then the other reason is you just flat out can't rely on Kyrie Irving to be a consistent participant in basketball games. And that's pretty funny to say because he's a basketball player. That's what he's supposed to be doing. If he's not injured, he should be out there playing. But it's injuries, it's taking time off to do his own thing or whatever, or not being vaccinated and not being allowed to play, not making the sacrifices that everyone in the NBA is making to make the season go smoothly and give their teams the best chance to win. So he's just not reliable. Obviously, you can't deny the production and talent because he dropped 60 in a game this year against the Magic when he was a part-time player, basically playing every other night, not even getting a rhythm. He doesn't really need a rhythm. He's just so talented. So it's just disappointing to think about like what he could have done for them because he missed 123 games with the Nets this year. Not this year, over the course of his time with the team. That's a lot of games, and obviously it looks like this experiment is not going to continue. And obviously with Kyrie being out, everyone's wondering what Kevin Durant is going to do. And a report came out that he is not going to necessarily demand a trade, but will probably consider it. And I think that's the right move because KD is at a point where he needs to be winning championships. He can't be stuck in a situation in Brooklyn where it's just him and Ben Simmons. That's not going to work. So let me know what you guys think about this situation in Brooklyn. Do you think KD and Kyrie are going to be Brooklyn Nets next year? And if not, where do you see them guys playing? And then obviously check out my other content that will be linked in the description. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on the draft and other video ideas that you would want me to do, both NBA and NFL. Thank you for watching.